To see my dad, my role model, my idol, my everything, decide that he no longer wanted to live. He no longer wanted to see me. He no longer wanted to spend time with me. He no longer wanted to be my dad, was the hardest moment that I've ever had to deal with.
Oh my Lord, oh my day, I've come a long, long way, and I've been lost in a lonely place. They're recognizing me. Oh my Lord, oh my days, I've come a long, long way.
So I've actually been putting this video off for a while, but I can't believe that it's been 8 years since my dad took his own life. And without fail, that was the most pivotal point in my life, the biggest turning point that I've ever had. And I've shared the story before, whether it was the article that I wrote for the Huffington Post or standing in front of 150, 200 men at Menfluential in Atlanta and explaining the story then. But every time I speak about it, there's a slight release. It seems like I almost deal with his death and deal with his suicide a tiny bit more every time I speak about it. And it might seem weird, me actually talking about this into a camera and putting it onto YouTube, and trust me, I've put this video off for so long, but it feels right. It feels like if I can put this story out there and it helped one of you, and at the same time it's helping me every time I explain it, then it's gonna make it way worth it. So let me put the camera down because that's gonna irritate my arm holding this tripod. It's probably not the greatest angle, but as I've already mentioned, over 8 years ago now, the 4th of March 2009, my dad killed himself. On paper, he had no reason to. He had a full-time job, a well-paid job. He had a part-time physiotherapy, sports massage business that he created from the ground up. He had a loving wife who, they were childhood sweethearts. He had me and my brother, 2 loving sons. He had loving parents. At my dad's funeral, I remember pulling up and the car park was closed. And the reason why the car park was closed is because there was too many cars, too many people at my dad's funeral. He had so many friends, so much love, so much support. I remember people standing up all down the sides at my dad's funeral because there weren't enough seats to cater for the amount of people that came to my dad's funeral. But with all this being said, he had this love, he had this support, but he didn't feel like he could reach out to just one of us. Now, I've told this story before, as I've mentioned, but I remember one day going to see my dad, and my dad was quite a sensitive guy, but he never really showed much emotion. He never really cried, but he was a very caring guy. And I remember he was just off. His personality had changed. And I remember just looking him in the eyes, and his eyes were glazed over. And actually reflecting on it now, it wasn't my dad. And ever since that moment when I went and saw him and his eyes were glazed over and his personality was different, that for me was the day that I lost my dad. 2 weeks from that moment, he went to the doctors. The doctors prescribed him some antidepressants. My dad never really took any medication whatsoever. And it was probably a short period of 2 weeks where he just wasn't himself. He was very down, he was depressed, and we were extremely worried about him. But at this point, we just thought, as my dad's just gonna pick himself up. 2 weeks from that moment, near enough, he got taken into A&E, accident and emergency at the hospital, because he said that he was feeling suicidal. And they took him to accident and emergency, left him in the waiting room, and he walked out of the waiting room and walked to a busy road. Now, there was a roundabout just near the hospital where he was taken, and he walked down, probably 100 meters from the roundabout, and he stepped in front of a van. It's still a blur, and I'll explain the story in more details in another video or in a series of videos, but he actually survived that accident. Even though we were told to say goodbye to him, he survived the accident. He had a blood clot on his brain, but all seemed well. And after a month or so, he was then in a mental health unit, dealing with his depression, being put on medication. And it was just a complete life-changing moment. This accident, him being in a mental health unit. But then 6 months from his initial breakdown, that moment that I went to see him and his eyes were glazed over and he wasn't my dad at all, 6 months after that actual breakdown, he did take his own life. And as I said, it was the worst point in my life, the biggest turning point in my life. And to see my dad, my role model, my idol, my everything, decide that he no longer wanted to live. He no longer wanted to see me. He no longer wanted to spend time with me. He no longer wanted to be my dad, was the hardest moment that I've ever had to deal with. I mean, this was the kind of man that he was. He was a bit of a joker. He was always trying to make us laugh, especially me and my brother. And these are his pants. I think they were clean at the time. Hopefully they were, but here's another one. So like I say, he was a runner, and he was, you know, always doing races. This was actually our school race. And I believe he won that. He used to win our school races quite often. My granddad's there in the background, the one with the top off. He's still alive, 92, going strong. And this is a common sight with my dad. He used to always fall asleep on the sofa, but I don't know if you can see it there. He's actually got the TV controls in his hand. And I remember this time because we took this photo because he was fast forwarding what we was watching and he fell asleep. So we were like, stop dad, stop. And he was already asleep and he was still fast forwarding it. And you can see as well, I think we put something on his top. This is my favorite photo of my nan, my dad, and my granddad. Now, my nan, she died a month after my dad died. She got diagnosed with cancer. She got diagnosed with cancer probably about a year and a half before, maybe about 2 years before my dad died. And she was told she had 6 months to live. And in fact, she lived for over 2 years. But when my dad was going through his mental health battle, she really declined. And after he died, it was a month after, and she passed away. My granddad, as you can see there, he is still alive. He's 92. He's a stubborn old bastard, but he really is an inspiration. But I mean, my granddad, as you can, like I said, you can see him there. He lost these two, his only son and his wife of over 50 years in the space of 30 days. So he really is an inspiration to just continue doing what he's doing, and he's always the life of the party. That's me and my dad, so you can probably see how much of a chav. If you're from the UK, you'll understand what a chav is. I was back then. But that's me and my dad. I love look at the silver necklace, the gelled down hair, but my dad's more tan than me as well. But this was in our old house. But why am I actually doing this? Why am I talking into this camera here? Explaining a point in my life which I never ever spoke to anyone about for months, if not years. It took me ages to open up and explain how I felt about losing my dad to suicide. It took me forever to talk about it to my family, to actually go and see someone to help me with my depression and help me understand why my dad decided to kill himself. But the reason why I'm fighting through this fear and this weirdness of me standing here talking to this camera is because it's about time someone did. Since that day, I've had plenty of ups and downs. I've been depressed. I've suffered with panic attacks, anxiety. I've tried to carry on like a normal young adult would. I went clubbing a week after my dad killed himself. I chased short-term pleasure for such a long period of time. And I've really been at my lowest points since this happened, but also as well, I've been at my highest points. Since that day, I've started multiple businesses. I've created freedom for myself. I've got married. I've become a dad. I'm also a stepdad. I've lost more loved ones along the way. I've had people that have had life-changing accidents happen to them who are close to me. But all in all, I've been on a journey. I've been on a journey to improve myself, to better myself as a man, and also understand more of why my dad did this, and really understand more in terms of my own mental health and how can I improve the way that I feel. But deep down, the main question that it always comes back to whenever I ask myself, why am I doing this? Is because I truly wanted to find out the reason why my dad decided to kill himself. And then deeper than that, why is suicide the biggest killer of men under the age of 50 right now? Out of all of the suicides last year, how comes 79% of them were men? Those are shocking statistics that I didn't even know of until 2 years ago, and my dad actually took his own life and I was still unaware of those statistics. So all honesty, the reason why I'm just overcoming this weirdness and actually putting this out there is because Someone needs to speak up. Someone needs to talk about this because mental health is serious. And those statistics, they don't lie. Men are taking their own lives at a shocking rate. In the UK alone, a man takes his own life every 2 hours. The UK is tiny. It's a tiny little country on that huge spectrum of the map. And if a man is taking their own life every 2 hours in that tiny country, what does that say for the rest of the world? I remember this one. This is my dad's 40th birthday. We just went to a restaurant. You can see my granddad there as well. That's me. It's 2003, so I was 13. March 2003. So yeah, I was 13 years old. So this was his 40th birthday. Look at that style. Yellow shirt. Is that fashionable? I don't think so, but I can't really say much about that ugly polo shirt that I'm wearing as well. Wearing a nice grey suit there, Dad, but I'm not too sure about the tie. That's my mum. And obviously me and my brother are a lot younger. They were young parents, my mum and my dad. They got married young. My mum was 19 when she got married. And they had obviously me and Steve very young as well. But look at the decorations in the house as well. That's old school, very old school. But those are good times. I don't really remember it. I don't know how old I am there. I'm probably about 4 or 5, so yeah, I don't really remember too much of it. But I remember the house, and me and my brother always got mistaken for twins back then. Even now, people say that we still look alike. But he's 2 years older than me. Just a few more photos. This is us on holiday. Me, my dad, my brother, me representing Liverpool Football Club. My dad's style was never exactly formal. Look at that. That was a trip to London and he's wearing what an athlete would wear. He's wearing his running stuff. And then I think this one's at Center Parcs. So when we were younger, obviously at Center Parcs, my mum and dad looked very, very young there actually. And me and Steve, as we normally would, are matching in what we're wearing. And then this one is, I like this one. This one's, I used to have this in my wall in my office. This is my nan and my dad. This was taken in Spain. We went to Spain to see some friends. And my nan nearly didn't make it because she obviously had cancer and she was getting treated and she got taken into hospital the day before we went to Spain. But my dad treated us all to that trip to Spain to see some of his friends from work. And yeah, that was my last holiday with my dad. Now, in fact, creating this video, it actually makes me feel good. Like I said, it's almost a release. It's actually cheap therapy. Putting it this way, maybe it's cheap therapy. I don't have to spend money on seeing a counselor. Maybe I can just chat to you guys. But I also want to show you that it's good to talk. It's actually okay to be vulnerable and to be open. And vulnerability is strength. It isn't a weakness. Suicide, depression, anxiety, OCD, mental health as a whole. It's good to talk about it. You don't need to suffer in silence. I'm a 27-year-old who's struggled to battle with a huge ego my whole life. I love football. I support Liverpool Football Club. I enjoy drinking beer. I'm a man, but at the same time, I understand that mental health matters. Now, as I'm actually recording this video, I'm in a very, very good place right now, but it hasn't always been like that. It's been extremely tough, and since that day of my dad taking his own life, I have really been on a journey to continue to improve myself. And actually, there was a point in my life after my dad did take his own life that I felt extremely depressed. And like I said, I had anxiety, I had panic attacks, and I even feared, and my biggest fear is that I ended up like my dad. You know, people would say, Paul, you're extremely like your dad, you look like your dad, you're sporty like your dad, you're like your dad, you're like your dad. And when my dad decided to kill himself, I was thinking, okay, is that me? Am I gonna be the same as him? Am I gonna end up like him? And it's really that journey of just trying to feel the best that I possibly can and understand mental health and deal with mental health and try and help others by just explaining my story and how I felt and understanding what I've learned since I've been on this journey. Because I'm not claiming that I'm a guru. I'm not claiming that I'm anyone different to any of you watching this video. All I'm saying is that I want to share my story, and hopefully my story and what I share in these videos can help you in some way. Now, as I've mentioned, I'm going to be documenting this process I'm gonna be sharing as much as I possibly can from this point forward in terms of self-improvement, how I feel. I'm gonna invite other men and women as well onto these videos and see what they truly think about mental health, how we can break that stigma, how we can not suffer in silence anymore. And I really do hope that you will join me on this journey. I'm really excited to create more videos like this. This camera might become my therapist for the next few months. And I really hope that, like I say, you will follow me along this journey and hopefully it will help you in some way. See you soon, guys. Last one though, have a little look at this. What a stud. Look at that style as well. These were G-Unit jeans. This was a G-Unit t-shirt, I believe as well. These were actually, yeah, you're seeing that right. These are painted on jeans, painted on t-shirt, extra large. Had the cubic zirconia earring in as well. That boy's got style.